to Russell Walker Meets on Glasgow Chamber of Commerce TV. Now, many of us are really missing sport right now, and although it's coming back, mostly behind closed doors in some countries, it's going to be a while before we go to another football match in Scotland. But don't despair, because I've got a real treat for you. I'm joined today by two Scottish football players who made their mark up here and in England. Hello to Andy Walker and Alex Raes. How have you both been coping with lockdown? Andy?
It's been a really strange experience, Russell, but I'm glad that my two boys are at home because they've given us a good bit of company. We've played a bit of cards, we've learned to do a bit of cooking, which I've never been in the kitchen before, so that's been good fun. I've done a hell of a lot of gardening, but I'm missing my daughter, I'm missing my other son, and I would just love, like everyone else, just to see them and give them a squeeze.
Alex?
Because of the isolation in terms of being locked within the house, I'm quite fortunate that I've got a big back garden. So I've had table tennis, I've had badminton, and it was my boy's 11th birthday, so I got my big full-size goal in the back garden as well. So from that aspect, it's been really good because you're just getting back to basics, like Andy said there. You know, you're just getting back, you're doing the stuff that you tend to miss, really, because they're at school and things, so you spend a lot more time with the family. I've actually found it relatively easy to adapt to that because I'm at home most days anyway. So, you know, if anything, the kids have had to adapt to it. My wife, who's not working at the moment because of the lockdown, so I found it really easy.
Good. Oh, well, that's good news. Listen, let's delve into some memories right from the start. And Andy, I want to start with a really big one for you, I guess. You just started at Celtic, I think, in about 87. You'd come from Motherwell. And
that's right.
I'm just thinking back then, the 2-2 infamous match at Ibrox, Rangers v Celtic. Not only did you play in that game, you scored in it. I mean, McAvenny sent off, Butcher sent off, Woods sent off, Roberts in goal for Rangers, conducting the fans at the end. What was that match like to actually play in?
A fabulous occasion for me. It was a game I wanted to play in as a young boy, and I wanted to see so many Celtic games. And unbelievably, I was also spoken to by the police. I got booked in the game, and anyone who had overstepped the mark, whether you were yellow or red carded, we were spoken to by the police in the aftermath of it. I put it down to a fabulous experience because my first Old Firm game had been at Celtic Park. We'd beaten Rangers 1-0. Billy Stark had scored. Graham Souness had been sent off. And I was just blown away by the occasion, by the noise, by the atmosphere. So to go to Ibrox a couple of months later and score in that game at the Celtic end, and that was a fabulous memory. But I think the emotional roller coaster that you go on in Celtic Rangers games, that hit me that day because we felt as though we should have won the game, maybe even won it comfortably. But I think what you quickly learn in these games is you never underestimate your opponent, because Rangers were they were down to 9 men, we had 10, and they came back and they got a 2-2 draw. So there was as you would probably expect, with a team like with McCoist and Durrant and Ferguson and Goff in it, there was a never say die attitude, and they got a point. We felt as though we'd lost the game, but just the sheer emotion of it, I think it's my favourite Old Firm experience. Even although we didn't win, it was just getting a goal. It was the highs and the lows, and it's painted as a horrible game. It really wasn't. It was. There was a wee bit of lack of discipline, but nothing that you don't get in many games, as I'm sure Alec would agree with.
Did you watch the game, Alex?
I did do, yes. I actually found the whole thing quite funny, you know, because you're actually watching from the outside. But I agree with Andy in terms of the emotion. When you get wrapped up in it, and going back to my first Old Firm game, I was 34. So, you know, you're thinking it's passed you by. And it's the build-up to these games that, for me, that are actually the exciting part. You know, the round about the city, your friends are supporting both the Old Firm, and you just get a flavour for it because it just starts to build up. And my first game was at Parkhead, and within 2 minutes, I went to a tackle with Neil Lennon, and I just rocked my ankle. Both of us hit the ball at the same time, and I was banging trouble. But the actual adrenaline in these games, Andy, are just phenomenal, because I knew I'd done some damage, but I'm thinking to myself, waited all this time, I'm just going to ride it out. Got to half time, and I was pacing about the dressing room because I felt as if I sat down, I felt as if I would have seized up. And so I walked about for the whole 15 minutes and played the remainder of the game. And we lost 1-0, an Alan Thompson goal. And I went and got a scan the following day. I went and got a scan, Andy, and I had a 2-inch tear in my calf. So you're playing the full 90 plus minutes with a tear in your calf because you're adrenaline. But there's a price to pay for that, because I think I was out for about 10 or 11 weeks. But you just get so absorbed in the game.
Andy, just looking back to that game in '87 before we move on, you said you felt as if you'd lost the game. What was the atmosphere in the dressing room like?
Awful, really awful. We felt as though we'd chucked away. There was just I think it was just a point in those days. It was only 2 points for a win, but you know, the Rangers fans and the Rangers players were ecstatic. They'd got a point. They'd salvaged something, and we were 2-0 up. We were a man up. I remember crossing a ball over. Billy Stark hit the bar. And you've got to remember, we were playing against Graham Roberts' goal, because Chris Woods had been sent off. So we didn't really trouble them enough. And we maybe sat back a little, and we paid the price. And it was an awful experience, but it's that roller coaster that you're on with Celtic Rangers games. There's an extreme high, like Alec. I'm Glasgow born and bred, so to play in that game and to play with some of my heroes I played alongside, that's an extreme high. So when you don't win, when you feel as though you're in a position to win, it's a big low as well. So that emotional roller coaster, you very quickly have to deal with it. And I'm just thankful we had guys like Billy McNeil, our manager, Tommy Burns, Roy Aitken, Paul McStay. Even although he was my age, he'd already played in maybe about a dozen of them. So these guys really helped me through the ups and downs of that game. And thankfully we went on and we had a successful season.
Yeah, centenary season, won the league and cup double, didn't you? Alex, you were playing at, I think, at Falkirk at that point. So you got your move from Falkirk, and then you went to Millwall. What was it like moving down to England? What was it? Was it a culture shock or what?
I think when you look back, going down to Millwall was because I thought it was, you know, going to be this beautiful stadium. But I think Andy might have been at the Old Den. I know he came down in the early 90s, but when I was driving up to the Old Den, I was thinking to myself, I really want to get back to Brockville, because it was an absolute hovel. When you were going past, it was like old knacker yards, you know, like salvage places, and it's almost as if this stadium was plumped right in the middle of South East London. And then I get taken into the stadium, so we'll give you a tour of the pitch. And as you go around the pitch, it's all got wire fencing all the way around to keep the fans in. So it was a total culture shock for me. However, I think it's important, because Andy's obviously spoke about some big players at Celtic at that time. There's some terrific footballers, you know, Gary Hurlock. Teddy Sheringham was by far one of the best players I played with. He scored 38 goals my first season. So I was going down to a level with the greatest respect to the Falkirk guys. Some really, really terrific players. Gary Waddock, Stevie Woods, Brian Horn in goal. So they were really good, established players, because they've just been relegated for the top flight. So it was great, and I hit the ground running that season, particularly that first season, because I managed to get 13 goals. But it was great, and I know that Millwall gets a lot of tough press due to some of their fans misbehaving. But their lion's share of them are all kind of working class guys who have actually moved away from that area, and they have a brilliant following, do some great work in the community. So I loved it in Millwall, but it could be ferocious at times, even for the home players. If you weren't pulling your weight, they would soon let you know.
What was Sheringham like as a player? What made him so good, and what was he like off the pitch?
He was a flash Harry. he was great in terms of his ability on the pitch. People often say who was the best you played with. Teddy would be very much up there. To score 38 goals, Andy will tell you, at that time it was old League Two, effectively the Championship now. His range of goals, left, right, he was great in the air. His link-up play was brilliant, and he was just ahead of his time. You know, he was no blessed with pace, but in terms of, he must have lay on about 7-8 goals for me that season, because little intelligent passes, reverse passes, and he was brilliant. I mean, really, really brilliant. And you could see that he was going to go to a far higher level. And I was just kind of disappointed that I only got the 1 year with him, because he was brilliant. In terms of an individual, he was a brilliant guy. I used to go for the odd drink with him in and about London, and he just had a nice persona about him, Teddy. A lot of time for him.
You bring him up to Glasgow?
This is a true story. I used to like you're saying, because I was Glasgow born and bred, I used to come up for the Old Firm games when I could, throughout the course of my career. And I used to come back up and I'd go, Rangers Celtic to Big Teddy, right? And I said, you need to come up for a cup final. And it so happens that Terry Hurlock was playing for Rangers 90-91 season. And I took him up to Glasgow. And I was saying to him, because if you remember, Andy, 1990 was European City of Culture. The nightclubs were up to 6 in the morning. And I said, the nightlife.
City of Culture in Glasgow.
This was a special year. So I was trying to tell the big guy to come up with us. So I says to him, listen, Teddy, the nightlife's frightening. A woman, you'll love it, right? And so I've took him up, and he's all excited, because don't forget, he was jumping about blondes and, Stringfellows and all that, with all these kind of supermodels down in England. And I took him up to Savoy. But the thing is, we took him to the cup final, and in the days, Andy, we were opposite the main stand, and it was like a wire fence, maybe about 12 feet high. And the Rangers and Celtic fans were exchanging pleasantries. And he was brought up in the Millwall tradition, so he'd seen a lot. And he says he'd never seen it passion like it in his life. And he was really blown away by the actual day. And Andy will know this by working with Bruce Rioch. We actually missed the flight back home the following day. So we pitched up to the training ground about 1 o'clock, and Bruce Rioch was the manager, man. Oh my God, we were walking into the training ground, the two is a bit worse for wear for having a heavy weekend. So it didn't get doing well. And Andy mentioned the 1988 centenary double. Mick McCarthy was our captain at Millwall at that time, and I'll never forget, Big Mick grabbed me by the throat and went, I was at the game and I get back in time. And I stupidly said to him, I know, Mick, but you get battered. He threw me in the dressing room. I was trying to stay clear of him for a fortnight because he was going to leather me. But no, good times. I think Teddy often speaks about it. I know it was a great weekend.
And Andy, did you enjoy your time down in England? Because you went to Bolton in 91?
I'd gone to Newcastle. Stupidly, I went there injured. Russell Ozzy Ardiles was the manager, and I would really have enjoyed staying there. I went for a month's loan, and I was only fit for a couple of games, so that didn't work out. And when Bolton came in, Phil Neal was the manager, and I really enjoyed it because we had a young Alan Stubbs, we had a young Jason McAteer, we had a guy in midfield called Tony Kelly, who was a wonderful footballer. At the end of the season, Phil Neal got the sack, Bruce Rioch came in, and one of his first signings was John McGinley. So John and I formed a partnership, and I wouldn't put him in the same category as Frank McAvenny, but certainly in terms of his work rate, he was a wonderful striker to play alongside. And of course, it was at a time where most of the clubs I'd been at, Russell, we played a 4-4-2. It was always a two up front. It was always a strike partnership. I'd played with Mark McGee at Celtic. I'd played with McAvenny. I'd played with Jakinowski. Played with Tommy Coyne. And at Bolton, there was a guy there called Tony Philliskirk, who was a really, really nice lad, good player too. But Bruce didn't fancy him. Brought in John McGinley, and we went on to have a really productive spell. We scored a lot of goals between us, and managed to get promotion. It was a really good time.
And Alex, you must have played with McGinley as well at Millwall, did you?
I did do, yeah. John, I was just about to ask Andy, did he ever frequent his pub in Bolton? He bought a pub.
Yes, we did. And I think John, when he got that, he spent a wee bit too much time in it.
Yeah, no, he did. I know. No, but
along with others.
If my memory serves me right, we get rid of John McGinley, and we actually signed it was Big Mick McCarthy who signed this boy. We went to play Wrexham in a pre-season friendly, and there was a boy called Chris Armstrong, Andy, and he was challenging Big Mick, and Big Mick had lost his legs at that time, and Bruce lost his job and then came to Bolton, and he was flicking the ball on, turning, and then getting his own flick on, and it was a boy called Chris Armstrong. They ended up paying 50 grand for him, and I think he moved for about 4 or 5 million. But so we'd gone for John McGinley, and then obviously we get Big Chris coming into the mix, so he brought another dimension. But it was a good time. It was a good club, Millwall. You know, they had a couple of playoff possibilities to get back into the top flight, but it never quite happened for us. And the problem was that every year they had to keep selling one of their key players. They had Ben Thatcher, Andy Roberts, Mark Kennedy. So they were selling players for about £1 million to £2 million every summer. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to constantly replace players of that quality.
You both had, for Millwall and for Bolton, you both had some giant-killing results in the FA Cup. I think, was it Arsenal that Millwall beat, and Liverpool you scored, Andy, in a win in the FA Cup?
Yeah, we had a really good run where we beat Arsenal, we beat Liverpool, we beat Everton, we beat Villa, we beat Wolves, and it was that time where we were getting a lot of scouts at games, and when we beat Arsenal at Highbury, I remember Bruce Rioch saying to us the following day, where we'd won after extra time. We'd drawn the first game at our place, and we won at Highbury, and Terry Venables was England manager, and he called Bruce up the next day and he just congratulated him and said you had the best player on the pitch. And of course Bruce thought he might have been talking about Alan Stubbs or Jason McAteer, and he said no, Tony Kelly controlled the whole game. And this was a guy who, he had problems with his weight, Tony. He always carried a few extra pounds. But my God, he could control a ball, he could pass a ball, he had great vision. And I think that's still, I still bring that up when I see Tony for time to time when I'm back down in Bolton, maybe near there covering a game. I'll look him up and we'll have a coffee.
I remember playing Arsenal, we drew 0-0, and we thought we'd lost our opportunity. We were going back over to Highbury, and we actually beat them 2-0. And it's interesting what Andy's saying there about in terms of putting players on the map, because young Mark Kennedy, who was 19 at the time, scored an unbelievable goal for the edge of the box, and within a few months he'd actually joined Liverpool for £2 million, and I think he was the most expensive teenager at the time. So we beat them, and then we also beat Chelsea at the Bridge, which was terrific, because there's that little pocket of Millwall fans, and they didn't half make a racket. So I think when you go, particularly when you're like a smaller club beating some of these giants with the household names, it's just a great feeling. And I would love to see Millwall back at the top table. Would you imagine them, Andy, as it stands at the moment with all the money, all these superstars going to the Den? Oh, it'd be brilliant.
Marvellous.
Andy, while Alex was down at Millwall, you came back up to Celtic. Was that a surprise move, did you think? I mean, did you see it coming, or how did that happen?
It was more an emotional move for me. My dad was on his last legs. He had been living with cancer. He only had a few months to go, and it was a no-brainer for me to come up and spend the last couple of months at home. And I came back up in July. My old man passed in October. But of course I was coming back to Celtic, and I knew it was going to be a tough time, and I think the only man that could have steered Celtic through such a difficult time was Tommy Burns. You've got to remember at that time, Russell, Celtic were finishing 4th, 5th in the league. I mean, it was incredible. Rangers were really strong, and they were in the throes of going for the 9 in a row. They had top quality players, and Tommy was working with a number of kids, a number of senior pros. He still had Paul McStay, John Collins, Akinbag. He signed Willie Faulkner, or rather Lou Macari had signed Willie Faulkner, so he still had him as an experienced player. But I think Tommy bought himself some time with the supporters because they all wanted him to succeed. And then eventually Fergus, McCann released a few of the first strings. We got Andy Tommen, Pierre Van Hooijdonk come in. Eventually Alan Stubbs came in. Celtic were beginning to turn the corner and really add some quality. The recruitment was a lot better. The investment was a lot better. And it's a great shame that Tommy wasn't given an opportunity of one more season, because we had, the last season I had in my second spell, we lost one game. And I think we really pushed Rangers. Rangers had, I think, in all fairness, they had far more match winners, potential match winners than we had. But we drew a lot of games, only lost one. And Rangers won the title again, and Tommy paid for it with Tommy won the Scottish Cup in '95 when Pierre Van Hooijdonk scored against Airdrie, and that was his only trophy. I'm so glad I got to experience a title-winning team at Celtic. There were guys there. I think John Collins, who was one of the best players I played with, John Collins played at Celtic for 6 years, didn't win a title.
And of course, Alex, as a big Rangers fan, you were watching this from afar down in England and loving it.
And that's the thing about when you're down south. I actually became more passionate about Rangers as I was away, because I didn't get an opportunity to actually get up the road as often as I would like to. So I was really just watching the whole 9 in a row for a farm, getting up for maybe a couple of games a season. But you do miss it because of the magnitude, especially when you're from the city.
You went to Sunderland under Peter Reid, Alex. Fair to say that's probably where you played your best football?
I would probably say so. The first couple of years weren't great for us. I was causing a wee bit more hassle than I should have done. I wasn't applying myself properly. I was kind of out socialising a little more than I should have done. And I decided that when I was about 28, just after 28, 29, I thought I need to get on top of this. And from that point, my career really took off, because, you know, Andy will tell you, the Championship's really unforgiving. I mean, really unforgiving. And we lost 4-4. We drew 4-4 and lost in penalties when Michael Gray missed. And then Niall Quinn said to us, directly after the game, he done the team talk, Niall Quinn, who was the centre forward, and he says, listen, we'll come back stronger next year. And we ended up with 105 points in the Championship, which was a record. I think that equates to about 37 games won out of 46, which is a remarkable achievement at that level because of the competition. There are a lot of tough games. And then we were favourites to go relegated the next season, and we managed to just miss out in Europe 2 years in the bounce. And it was great. And Andy will tell you, because see, when you're playing at the top level, I'm not really talking for myself, but when you're playing in the top level against World Cup winners, I never forget, because we played against Chelsea, Andy, in the opening game of the season, and Peter Reid said to us, we're just going to play the way we played last season. We're blowing everyone out of the water. We're going to Stamford Bridge. And we actually get beat 4-0. I think they had 4 World Cup winners playing that day. They had Desai, Leboeuf, Deschamps and Petit. 4 World Cup winners, and Reedy thinks we'll go and play expansive football at the Bridge. We get absolutely battered. And this is to give you a little insight to Peter Reid, because he was ferocious. About 40 minutes after, 50 minutes after, he says, no one's getting changed. Stay in your training gear. Got the kit man to get his T-shirts. And he made us sit in the middle of the park at Stamford Bridge about 50 minutes after the game. And we were all sitting there thinking, right, here we go, he's going to go through us. And he says, I take full responsibility for that result. I was very naive. And from that point, you know, when we were away from home, we were a lot more solid. We weren't like kind of expansive. And he'd learnt lessons just for that one game. And we had an unbelievable season because we just missed out Europe, which would have been an amazing achievement.
You had 2 seasons in the Premiership. I think you finished 7th on both occasions and then got relegated.
Yeah.
You got a second chance at the Premiership with Wolves. How did that come about?
And the only thing I'll say about the Wolves, see, when we get promoted after, I think it was the first time in 19 years, just going into 20 years, it was the first time they get back to the top flight. And for me, it was all about Sir Jack Hayward. He had ploughed tens and tens of millions into Wolves and didn't really quite get that. And I remember seeing him. It was at Cardiff because Wembley was getting done up again. And I remember Sir Jack coming on the pitch and the smile and the money he'd invested. And he got his wish after all the years. So for me, it was just a delight to actually be part of seeing the fans and him, because it's a really good club. And I actually think that was a springboard for where Wolves are now, because It allowed them to get the parachute money. They bounced up and down with Big Mick and a few other managers over the years, and they've now found a really good owners who are willing to invest a lot of money, and they've got a brilliant manager and infrastructure at the club now. And I think Wolves can really just start creeping up and start kind of making a concerted effort to try and break into that top six, some of the big guns, because of the recruitment, and if they can hold the manager, I think they could really just break into it, because the last couple of years have been brilliant. I mean, amazing to see the stadium's been increased as well. So it's a club that's very much on the front foot.
Andy, I was just looking at your career at the end, towards the end, just when you stopped playing, and you had a lot of clubs at the end the last couple of years. Does that indicate you found it quite hard to give it up? Was it a really difficult decision for you to walk away from the game?
Well, when I came back from Sheffield United, Howard Kendall, Bill Alex, we'd lost the playoff final at Wembley against Palace. David Hopkins scored a fantastic goal, last kick of the ball with no chance to recover. But I soon left Sheffield United, went to Hibs on loan, which I really enjoyed. That was under Jim Duffy. But I couldn't believe it when I got to Edinburgh. We had 55 signed players. It was just an astonishing amount of players. So a few weeks later, and Jim Duffy get the sack, Alec McLeish came in, and I would love to have stayed another season, but it was an easy decision for Alec to get rid of me, because I was on loan, and he had to get rid of about 20 players. So Hibs actually ended up getting relegated, and then I went to Ayr United just for one season, which I really enjoyed. And then in my last year, I was down at Carlisle on loan. I went to Partick Thistle on loan, and I ended up at Alloa part-time. And I knew when I joined Alloa after about a month that I wouldn't play the following season. I was still enjoying the Saturday, but I didn't enjoy being a part-time player. I didn't enjoy training twice a week. I was used to demanding more from my teammates, and it's really hard to demand more from a guy who's been working on the roads for the whole day, and he's coming to training and he's exhausted, and I'm asking him to run a wee bit further. For me, I knew at the end of that season I wouldn't play anymore. I wasn't getting the same level of enjoyment, and I was 35, and I'd already been asked to go and do some games for Radio Clyde.
Andy, see, before us, I'll ask you a question. You mentioned Howard Kendall. What was he like? Because everybody that actually played under Howard, I nearly went to Everton in 1991 and the deal fell through, and I often think what would have been like to play with him, because every player speaks very highly of him.
I really liked him, Alex. I'm laughing because he's no longer with us. Of course, right. He died a few years ago, but remember we played Ipswich in the playoff semi-final, and Ipswich had battered us during the season. They battered us home and away. We'd gone to Portman Road, and we'd got a 1-1 draw at Bramall Lane, and I come on as a sub, scored a goal that took us to Wembley, because it was away goals at that time. And I remember coming into the dressing room after it, and Howard Kendall had the biggest smile I've ever seen in a manager, and he said, "Andy, I love you." Howard, I love you too. And he was a great party guy, and he loved a social occasion. I really don't want to play down his managerial career. He was the last Englishman, I think.
That's right,
to win the top flight down south. He had some brilliant teams with Everton. He put together a really good team at Sheffield United. We just missed out with a playoff final, but he went back to Everton on the strength of doing so well for Sheffield United. So I really enjoyed Howard. I enjoyed his company. He was a great man.
So, Alec, you came back up to Rangers in 2004. That was a great move, I guess, for you, especially at the end of your career, effectively.
Yeah. It was. I was doing an interview with Tony Gubber from the BBC, and we were at my house in Wolverhampton, and we'd completed the interview. I was having a good little spell in my last season at Wolves. I think I'd scored about 7 or 8 goals from the middle of the park up until about Christmas time. So I was doing okay. And he packed up the camera work, and he says, "I meant to ask you your 2 passions." I says, "Well, I'm starting to play a little bit of golf. I'd been playing a lot of golf with Paul Ince at that point." I says, "But as soon as this is all done and dusted, I'm going to go and watch Rangers in Europe. You know, my mates have been following them all over Europe since they were teenagers, right up until, you know, their 30s. And he said to me, he says, "Actually, I'm meeting Alex McLeish tomorrow. I'm doing an interview with Alex tomorrow, the Rangers manager." And I says, "Will you tell Big Red I'm available for nothing in the summer?" From that conversation, I signed a pre-contract 6 weeks later. You couldn't make it up, circumstances. So that's how I actually get back to Rangers, because of that interview.
That is ridiculous.
No, I'm serious. I couldn't believe it, because Alex came to watch us a couple of times. I think Andy Watson came to watch us play at Leeds. And as I said, I was having a very good year that year. I think, as I said, I'd managed to score 8 goals from the middle of the park, which was good going at that level. So I'd signed the pre-contract, and coming back to Glasgow, which was Russell, it was an absolute blessing in disguise. The Wolves fans at the time had a song, and you know, normally when you get a song sang about you, you're relatively quite jovial about it. You're like, "Lovely, the fans love me." And it used to be, "He's got no hair and we don't care. Alex, right?" It's the worst song ever, right, Andy? I hated it. But my wee daughter was about 2.5 at the time, so she'd be walking about the house singing to her wee wellies, not walking about. She'd be walking about, "It's got no hair and we don't care." And I thought, I need to get her back up the road, because she was starting to get a black country accent as well. So when Rangers came in, it was ideal. I'd managed to nick a 2-year contract as well at 34. You see what Andy's talking about, coming for the city, the prospect of playing an Old Firm match, the prospect to run out at Ibrox, having get released as a kid. It was just too much for me, and to come back up, you know, having done all the miles up and doing all the motorways, it was just good to come back home, really.
Tell us about Helicopter Sunday, because that was your first season back.
Leading up to Helicopter Sunday was, you know, the message was pretty straightforward from Alex. He says to us, "Make sure you win the game, because if you don't, you'll never live it down. If the result goes the way you want it at Motherwell, and you don't take care of Hibs, it'll haunt you for the rest of your days." And my wife was in New York at that time. She'd booked up a holiday, because she said to me, "If you lose the league, you'll be an absolute nightmare." So she's in New York. I've been involved in about 650, 700 first-team games, and I've never been involved with a game where you're 1-0 up and the opposition don't cross the halfway line. Because if Hibs kept the scoreline down, they were getting to Europa League. So, you know, it's a game that was just playing, and it was playing out. And as the game was going on, Russell, there was a roar behind the Rangers end, but it had no bearing to what was actually going on in the pitch, because there was nothing happening. It was Big Marvin's just passing the ball at the back. And then it dawned on us that Motherwell had scored. And I looked over to McLeish, and he's making a sign as if to say, "They've scored." And then within a minute again, the same noise behind the goal. Barry Ferguson jumped on my shoulders and shouting, we've won this. And the game's still going on. So anyway, I managed to kind of compose myself. We got over the line, and we were just waiting for the trophy. I went in and had a conversation. I went and picked up the phone from the changing rooms, because I was crying. I was overwhelmed. I picked up the phone, went back outside, spoke to my wife, and she was in Bloomingdale in the 5th floor. She started crying. She said, "Give me a minute to compose myself." She walked to the stairwell, and she was sitting down crying, saying, "I wish I had been there. I know what it means to win the league with Rangers." Out of nowhere, she's sitting in the 5th floor of Bloomingdale's in New York, and this is a true story. All I hear is, "What's that, Linda?" I remember thinking to myself, "Who's she in New York with, Andy?" Saying, "What, Linda?" And it turns out that it's Mick McCarthy and his wife Fiona, who were over there on a holiday. She says, "Alex just won the league with Rangers." Big Mick said exactly what you says. "Don't tell me that, or I'll be greeting." And then, because Big Mick knew I was a big Rangers man, he says, "Listen, tell a wee man I'm absolutely delighted for him, because I know what it means." So to win the league in the cup at 35 with Rangers was just the icing on a long career.
What were your recollections, Andy, of that day? Because I presume you were working as a pundit on Clyde or for Sky or somebody?
I was working for Radio Clyde and I was at Fir Park. I was at the back of the stand, and I remember Celtic being a dominant side. I remember them missing umpteen chances. And then, of course, Scott McDonald, his 2 goals, it was astonishing. And of course, I was feeding, we didn't have commentary rights, I was feeding this information back to the station at Radio Clyde. And we might have been, or rather I was maybe 2 or 3 seconds ahead of what they were seeing on their TV screen. And of course, I'm telling them that Scott McDonald scored, and Peter Martin just couldn't believe it. I think he was in the studio with David Provan and Derek Johnson. You can imagine the contrast in emotions. So it's one of those times where, my God, you would love the idea of a championship now going right down to the wire. There was a period there where Celtic and Rangers had gone to the last day, and just the drama of it, I think, was fabulous for Scottish football. You saw the great drama in England a couple of years ago when Liverpool and Man City went down to the last game. I'd love to see that again, but remains to be seen. I think the following season coming up in a couple of months in August it's just going to be so strange with no supporters, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, listen, your recollections, both of you, have been brilliant. Let's do some quick questions just before we finish. Best players that you've played with and against, and why? Alex first.
It's a toss-up between Kevin Phillips and Sheringham. Kevin Phillips scored 30 league goals in a Premier League season. There's only about half a dozen, 6 or 7 players done it over the course of the Premier League since '92. So little Kevin, I played against. I would have to say, I would probably say Patrick Vieira. I thought he was a terrific player, a pure athlete, technically outstanding. But at that period, every team you went through in the top 6, there was World Cup winners and things, but Big Vieira always stood out for me.
Matt Cavani was a great strike partner, but I think the more complete player we had at Celtic was Paul McStay. I think he reached that level of consistency at Celtic during our double winning year of '88 that I find it hard to imagine anyone getting to that level again. Best I played against, I don't know if I'm lucky enough played against them because it was so tough. But we played. When I came through at Motherwell, we played in an era where, and even at Celtic, where if you went to Aberdeen, you were up against McLeish and Miller. If you went to Dundee United, you were up against Hegarty and Neary. I find it really difficult to separate Willie Miller and Dave Neary. Dave Neary was a truly wonderful player. If he was playing today, he would be a Rolls Royce. Great pace. Brilliant defender, lovely reading of the game, magnificent passer of the ball, and brilliant defender, brilliant penalty box defender, a bit like Willie Miller. So there was a real top class number of Scottish defenders at that time, and I'd maybe opt for Dave Neary. He was tremendous, really was.
And Andy, best advice you never took?
The best advice I never took was from a number of coaches I had earlier in my sort of, I wouldn't say professional, I'd say I was still an amateur at the time, but you'll never make it. And I always thought I would make it. And the funny thing was, when I got to Motherwell, and I immediately thought, God, I've made it. And then I had my first meeting with Tommy McLean. I wasn't getting a game in the first team. And he brought me in and he said, Andy, you've no pace, you've no tricks, you can't really cross a ball. I was a winger at the time. And I'm thinking, geez, I'm getting slaughtered here by my manager. And he said, "Do you know what you've got a decent touch. You're quite happy with your right foot and your left foot, so I'm going to play you as a back-to-goal striker." I'd never played there before. And it just sort of highlighted to me the benefit of coaching, good coaching, someone that saw something in me that I didn't have. And I'm always grateful to Tommy McLean for that. I think without his knowledge and his eye for a player, I might not have had a career.
And Alex, best advice you never took?
When I was 17, Walter Smith called me into the manager's office. He was the assistant to Souness, and he asked me how I'd done, because they had extended all the apprentices when Souness came in for 3 months just to review where they were going with it all. And Walter said to me, "How do you feel as if you've done, Alex?" I said, "I feel as if I've done okay, Walter." And he says, "So do we." And I remember sitting going, "I'm getting a contract here." And he says, "However, we're letting you go because your application's not right. And regardless of whatever profession you do, football player, electrician, plumber, you have to give it 100%, and we don't feel as if you're doing that." And I remember when I was 29, I'd actually turned my life around. And I met Walter, Ethel, and the boys, Neil and that, over in Marbella. And I sat with Walter and Ethel for about 4 hours. I was drinking water at the time. And I remember reminiscing with the conversation that we'd had in the manager's office. And I said to Walter, "I really wish I had applied that information that you were actually trying to give me as a young kid a lot earlier than I did, because I feel as if I could have played at a far higher level for a longer period." But I had to get to where I had to get to then kick on, because I reckon for the last 5 or 6 years of my career, I played at a level I should have been playing at most of it. So it's about, if there's any young kid listening, you've got to apply yourself properly regardless.
And of course, that's helped you with, I think you're doing a lot of charity work just now, which is based on helping people who've got addictions.
Yeah, we started, when I came back to Glasgow in 2004, it became very evident that the city was in the grips of addiction issues and alcoholism. So we set up a charity called Second Chance. It's been going for about 15 years, and we have helped. At the last count, it was maybe about 750, 800 people get clean and abstinent from mood-altering substances. So we're giving a little bit back to the city.
Andy, your best moments in football?
Just being, I was a team player, Russell. Just being part of a winning team for Celtic. I could highlight a million moments that were great for me, but just to be part of a team that won a league and won a cup in a special time in Celtic's history, that's what I remember most.
One of the standout things for me was, there was a couple actually, but when I actually became captain, I was in the League Cup semi-final to lead the team out of Hampden against Dundee United. I think we won 7-1 that day. That was from an individual point of view. But when we won the league with Sunderland to do the open top bus, there was estimated about 300,000. Just to see the actual joy that you actually bring to the supporters, because, as I said, you've got to enjoy the good times, because, if you look at Sunderland now, they're in the doldrums, they're in League One, and, there's an apathy about the club. So that to share that moment with the supporters who spend their money, and as Andy says, you're up and down the motorway back at 3 and 4 in the morning. So the standout for me would most certainly be that open top bus journey right along the waterfront of Sunderland. It was amazing.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on Glasgow Chamber of Commerce TV, Russell Walker Meets. Great T-shirt, Alex, by the way. Are you a fan?
I've been following them since I was 12, 13. And I've actually seen them about 5 times, 6 times live over that period as well at various concerts. So I love them. I love Pink Floyd. I've got the next generation as well, Russell. I've got my wee daughter into them. She's 16. So I took her to see Roger Waters 18 months ago. He was at Hyde Park. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Well, let's hope we can get back to some gigs fairly soon, and obviously get back to some football games. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on Russell Walker Meets. Brilliant.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Russell.